The Gospel according to Matthew chapter 2. Now after they, the wise men, had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child, to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. During the last few weeks, my son and I have watched classic Christmas movies together. Obviously, we started with The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is not a Halloween movie, it's a Christmas movie. We haven't yet gotten to Die Hard, but we'll get there. But we have watched The Polar Express, and Elf, and The Grinch, and Rudolph. And yesterday, I turned on what I thought was the original Frosty the Snowman. It wasn't. It turned out it was a sequel very close in time to the original Frosty, but it mostly focused on Frosty's desire to have a wife. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You're lucky. I will spare you the reasons why it was a sexist mess. But it was strange for me to realize in my 30s that there's a part of the Frosty lore that I did not know. Did you know that Jack Frost was the best man at that wedding? Honestly, it seemed unnecessary. That maybe because there was a snow parson at some point, which I objected to in religious reasons. I thought that the original Frosty was fine on its own. But that's a little bit how I feel as a preacher on Christmas morning. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say to you except, "Hey, Jesus was born, guys, go home." There's this temptation for preachers on these high holy days that come over and over again to try to do the story in a sexy new way or to transform it in a way you never thought about. But when we do that, it's like we're the writers of Frosty the Snowman 2, Frosty's wife Crystal. It's not necessary. The story stands on its own. Well, the story should stand on its own. 2,000 years after the fact, the story stands, but our familiarity with it can make us hold it at arm's length. We examine all of the elements and all of the characters, and we marvel at the details, and we read the histories, and then Christmas Day passes, and we pack it gently away with all of our other decorations until next year. Baby Jesus holds our collective imaginations for a moment, and then he's full grown again, and we're on the way to Easter. But the story shouldn't stand on our mantles or even up on our baptistries if it's going to be so far removed from us. Christian mystics throughout generations have recognized this very real human tendency to let the Christmas story be a story away from us rather than a story we live. Meister Eckhart wrote in his sermon, "When God Enters," "What good is it that Christ was born 2,000 years ago if he's not born now in your heart?" In much the same way, in his writing Messenger of the Heart, Angelus Silesius wrote, "Christ could be born 1,000 times in Bethlehem, but all is in vain unless he is born in me." However it's phrased, the sentiment is the same. Christmas just can't be a story we tell to each other. It has to be a truth we participate in. But how, right? I don't think any of us are going to be pregnant virgins in first century Judea. That train has sailed for me. I think a lot of you older ladies would be pretty angry with God to discover that you were miraculously pregnant, like Elizabeth. How can this story live in us then when we seem to have so little in common with its main characters? I think the answer is that we don't look at the main characters at all. Take the scripture I just read, for an instance. The Holy Family has to flee to Egypt, right? We know that part of the story. But stop for a minute and think about all the other people that make that part of the story possible. People have to sell Joseph and Mary food on that journey. People probably join with them on a caravan trail from Bethlehem to Egypt. Joseph probably has to pay for protection at a certain point, safe passage, traveling supplies, perhaps even more livestock to carry them into this new land where they know no one. And when they get to Egypt, where they stay for years, they have to find a home to live in and work for him to do. All of those actions require people behind them to happen. There's an invisible cast of characters in our Bible that make the story of Jesus and his family's survival even possible. That's us. This is how we become part of the Christmas story beyond storybook pages. I hate to break it to you guys, but we are probably not the main characters in God's grand plans for the world. I don't know who those people are, but I'm sure that God has them busy doing incredible things. Chances are our lives are about being the invisible people who make God's story possible. And that's incredibly significant work. If we're trying, like Meister Eckhart says, to have Christ be born into our hearts and lives, I think it's time we started using holy imagination about it. What if that person on the corner really does just need a couple of bucks to catch a bus ride home, and then when they get there, they'll end up saving their cousin's life because they're the only person who knows CPR? What if the kid in your child's 5th grade class will be the one who grow up to solve the world's energy crisis, but they really need someone to tutor them in reading right now? What if that annoying lady in your yoga class who desperately needs a roommate will turn out to be your best friend and also a match to the kidney your kid desperately needs donated in 20 years? I don't know. Maybe this is how we make Christmas possible in our own lives. Beyond this day, we look out into the world and all of its needs and all of its hurts, and we imagine the ways we are called to invisibly make a difference. Even if it's just selling food to a hungry family on the cheap, like someone sold food to Mary and Joseph on their long journey. Maybe it's just watching your friends' kids for free, like someone watched toddler Jesus so Mary and Joseph could find housing in Egypt. Maybe it's just giving a stranger a chance to find a job where you work, like someone gave Joseph a chance thousands of years ago. No one who helped Mary and Joseph, who made their lives easier, even possible, none of them knew the ramifications of what they were doing. No one held snotty-nosed baby Jesus for Mary and thought, this surely will be the one who saves the world. But that's not really the way God does things. God doesn't clue us in into the long-term effects of our faithfulness, into what loving our neighbors and our enemies looks like 30 years down the road. That's not why we're supposed to do it. The whole of the Christmas story is an invitation to imagine how we now can be God's actors even on the fringes of whatever the main story being told is. To be the ones who make hope possible, even for refugee families who are on the run from corrupt rulers like Mary and Joseph. I mean, that's great, isn't it? You are the hope someone is looking for. You are in the process of being prepared by God for a good work that you will never know the result of, ever. Somehow, someone will do incredible things for God, and they will do it because of a tiny, tiny act of grace or love or mercy or kindness or gentleness that you did. So don't put the Christmas story on your mantle away from you or pack it up with the decorations just yet. Examine it, and this time look for the people you forgot to look for in the first place. The invisible people who make the story possible. And let them teach you what it means to let Christ be born again into the world.